Good morning, Bermuda. The closest point, though, Fiona has passed us, and I think we have come through this here in pretty good shape. The initial stages cannot really be determined until fresh light, when our emergency crews can get out on the streets to assess the actual damage that we have received. So I'm asking the public to stay off the roads for as long as possible, so that our emergency crews can be out on the roads, so we could determine what is the state of our roadways. And those that are wanting to do work around their homes, my suggestion and advice is to be careful. I would advise that we stay inside, because the worst is gone, but we're still in the throes of tropical storm winds. So we don't want anyone getting hurt at this time. So I would pass it on now to Dr. Gashad of the Bermuda Weather Service to give us an update. Dr. Gashad.
Thank you, Minister, and good morning, Bermuda. We do have the closest point of approach, which has officially passed us. Nonetheless, I would like to caution that we do remain in hurricane force winds, and there are a few more significant rain bands to get through before we start to think about downgrading our warnings. The downgrade of the hurricane warning to the tropical storm warning will probably be in the next couple of hours, so probably by the 9 a.m. advisory, and then winds will be expected to abate below 50 knots by around 10 a.m. Then thereafter, we'll see a lingering period of tropical storm force winds into the mid-afternoon, and probably start to drop those tropical storm warning by 3 p.m. So just to reiterate, we are still under a hurricane warning that may be dropped by 9 a.m. And then further tropical storm warnings will be posted until probably mid-afternoon at this stage. And I did want to just run through some of the worst experienced conditions that we've had thus far, based on preliminary estimates at 7 a.m. National Museum of Bermuda, Commissioner's Point and Dockyard experienced sustained winds of 73 knots, that's 84 miles an hour, and a gust to 98 knots, that's 113 miles per hour. Again, these are preliminary numbers. Down here at LF Wade International Airport, where we're based at the Bermuda Weather Service, we've seen sustained winds of 50 knots, that's 58 miles per hour, and a gust of 70 knots, that's 81 miles per hour. And up the hill at Fort George and St. George's, where Bermuda Maritime Operations Center is, they've had sustained winds of 76 knots and a gust to 90 knots, that's 87 miles per hour, or 104 miles per hour gust. So to be sure, a significant event here in Bermuda. Peak surge thus far has reached about 2/3 of a foot, so quite a lot less than we were expecting at the time, but probably higher in, and that's at Ferry Reach, I should say, probably much higher and more exposed shorelines. And that peak storm tide is just approaching now. So we've got high tide at 7:30. And so right now we should see the worst storm tide as the sun is coming up. So we might be able to get some assessment of that. Pressure has dropped here at the airport to 990 millibars, and is I'm hoping that it's bottoming out and starting to rise again after now. And rainfall thus far hasn't seen a lot getting into the rain gauge. So far, we've only got about 1/3 of an inch. So much more of a wind event than anything, but we do remain in that that hurricane warning condition. So please do not let your guard down over the next few hours. Thanks very much, Minister. I'm happy to pass it back on to you.
Yes, Dr. Gashad, I really appreciate that. We have now handed over to Colonel Beasley at the Bermuda Regiment to get an update from the regiment. Colonel Beasley.
Hi, Minister. Yeah, the soldiers all were embodied yesterday afternoon. First thing, we're coming in checking their kit and equipment. to inspect everything that we're taking out. They've had their rally this morning. They're all in their barrack rooms having breakfast. And we're certainly just on the wait until the wind reaches the threshold where we can conduct reconnaissance across the island for any issues that will prevent emergency vehicles transiting towards the hospital is the first requirement that we do. And then once there's a safe route throughout the island, it'll be making sure there's either two routes or secondary roads. The Royal Bermuda Coast Guard is standing by to put their boats back in the water to service any of the islands and any residents that may be in distress out there. All the crews do have EMR or EMT placed with them. So the 5 response teams, 15 soldiers in each of them, will be able to cut across the island quite quickly to understand the situation and then be able to take proper actions from there. We do ask it if anybody has a call for service, you please do it through the EMO central number, and the new applications that EMO is using can task us or any other service appropriately. And I'm sure that number will be given out at the end of this brief. Thank you very much, Minister. Back to you.
Thank you, Colonel, for that brief. I'd like to now hand it over to Mr. Lyndon Rayner of the Disaster Management Team. Mr. Rayner, are you there?
Good morning, everyone. Yes, Minister. At the moment, we are, as the Colonel said, we are just waiting for press light before we can start some assessments of what's going on across the island. But overnight, it has been relatively quiet. We had 1 burglary report, 7 fire alarms, which were attributed to power outages, 4 medical calls, 2 of which resulted in hospital stay. And as we stated earlier, it's about 20,000 people without electricity. And we just got a report in a few minutes ago of 1 pill fire down at Dunkless. So at the moment, things are pretty quiet for us here in the EMO operations room. But I suspect that once first light comes and people start moving around, we'll probably start getting reports of down wires and whatnot. But we are going to be coordinating all our response through the Public Works, Parks, and RBR response teams. Minister.
All right, Mr. Renner, thank you very much for that. So as I recap, I have to say that we have passed the closest point, but as we have heard, we are still in the throes of the tropical storm wind. So I still urge the public to remain vigilant, stay off the roads, look out for your loved ones, and let the emergency services do the assessment so that we could get our island back up and running as soon as possible. Before I close, I'd like to give the emergency EMO number. And the number is, for anyone that may have an emergency, it's 444-1447. That's 444-1447. So stay safe, Bermuda, stay vigilant, and continue to look out for each other. And our next update will be in a few hours. Thank you.